Hey guys, it is about time that I did another writing vlog. To recap a little bit, I think the last time that I finished a writing vlog was my first revisions vlog. So I just started my first round of revisions for my novel. For those of you who are just tuning in, maybe this is your first writing vlog that you've seen, I will leave a link to my last one so you can sort of see what I'm talking about. But yeah, so I only filmed a few times when I was doing my revisions because once I really got going and I could not stop, and I just stopped filming when I was doing writing sessions. I really focused in on my book. If you've seen my recent videos, of course you know that I finished that round of revisions and that now I am on round 2. This time I am focusing mainly on cutting my word count because I felt like my first revision was really successful. I felt like it pulled things together really well, but it's too long. This is a problem I have always had. I tend to be a little bit long-winded, and I think the idea that I have for this book, I mean, originally my very baby steps of this idea, I was thinking it was gonna be 3 books, but as I was writing I was like, no, this is not gonna be 3 books. This is not nearly enough for 3 books. That being said, it's a little bit too much for 1 book, but not enough for 2 books. Yeah, it's one of those really frustrating in-betweens. So I need to make that 1 book a little bit shorter and a little bit easier to digest. And I think it's definitely doable. What I'm about to focus on in this session, you might notice I got my camera back there, and I definitely don't normally put on this much makeup, and I definitely don't wear contacts. I promise I'm gonna put my glasses on in just a second because I am not supposed to be wearing contacts. But what I'm about to do once I put on my glasses, of course, is delve into a certain scene that I think is just a little bit too long. I think one thing that I really have to do as I'm trying to cut, and I've never tried to cut words before, it's something that I don't like doing. A lot of writers, me included, really hate cutting your work because you put all that work into something and now you're just deleting it, and it's very difficult to do. And I did it a few times as I was writing this book. There were a few scenes that I ended up cutting out and stuff, but I've never really had to do it to this extent. That being said, now that I'm really looking at it with a close eye and with a cutting eye, with the intent to cut things, I'm noticing that it's doable, definitely in this case with this scene. What I'm really trying to do is look at each scene, and maybe it's an important scene. Pretty much all my scenes I think that I have in my book are important and I can't cut them out completely. But looking at how long they go and thinking about how much does this scene mean? Is this a really impactful moment? It's monumental. It's something that readers will want to immerse themselves in for pages. It's something that really merits the pages and the words. Or is it something that is necessary? You kind of need it just to keep the plot going, but it's really just tying things together, or it's really just getting from one point to another, and it's not that important. And that is the case with this particular scene. It's important that it stays in the book. It's important that it's there, but it doesn't need to be this long. It definitely doesn't merit it. When I weigh how important it is with the other scenes, it's just not that important. So I'm gonna cut it down. I'm gonna work on trying to slice it all up and to get rid of as much as possible and just leave the bare bones, because not only is it not as important to the book as it needs to be, but I do think it's also maybe a little bit boring for readers. So that's the plan for today. That's the goal. I'm gonna go through that scene. I don't know how long it's gonna take me. It might be easy. It might be a lot more challenging. I'm not quite sure. One little trick that I have, something that I've been doing actually for a very long time, since university days and creative writing classes, is if I'm cutting something and I'm having a difficult time cutting it out and I really want to hold on to it but I know it shouldn't be in there, I will copy paste it into a different document. I actually have a specific document for this novel, and I've been doing this for my other novels as well, my other works, and I just paste it there and I save it and I keep it. Even if I'm probably never going to use it, maybe I will, but so far I'll admit I haven't used any of the bits that I've cut out, but I have it. And it's less that feeling of getting rid of something, of losing something that might be valuable, because that's the really difficult thing about cutting. You feel like you're losing something. So in this way, you don't lose it. It's still there if and when you may want to use it in the future. So it hurts a little bit less. So that's what I'm gonna do if I find anything particularly valuable in this scene, but not valuable enough to actually keep.
Hey guys, so this is definitely not my normal environment. I am not at home right now. If you want to figure out where I am, you can watch, which side will it be on? Can never remember, but you can watch the vlog that has just popped up in a card, and I will link it down below as well, from the French Alps, which is where I am currently. Part of the time I am actually chilling, and then the other part of the time I'm sort of using this week as a writing retreat. But anyway, I am gonna start my writing session. Right now I am still in revisions, still cutting, but I have focused down to part 3 of my book. As I was writing, part 3 is the one that had the most changes from my original detailed plot, from my outline that I had, which was super detailed, but part 3 actually got ripped apart a couple of times and re-put back together. So it's had a lot more changes since the first initial outline. I think those changes have been good. It was definitely needed for the plot, and it was definitely needed to make it a better book and a better story, but it has ended up with part 3 being way too big, way bigger than I intended it to be from the beginning. So looking at the word count, I have it kind of broken down in a separate tab on my computer, and part 3 is nearly 55,000 words of my book. So it's almost the size of a book in and of itself. And then my other parts are, my part 1 is a little over 33,000 words, and my part 2 is almost 40,000 words. So clearly part 3 is the big part of the book. So I do think it's the one that needs the most work, and because I did develop it a lot more, I think I probably have a better idea of what I can go in and cut. And because it has less of introductory elements, the real world building, character building and stuff of part 1 and part 2, it's sort of where everything comes to a climax. So I do think that I have probably too much information in general. I need to be a bit bolder with my cuts now, because I have been cutting a lot of sort of sentence level things. I've cut little paragraphs here and there, little descriptions that aren't necessary, where I get a little bit too wordy with my writing and stuff that's just not necessary. But I do actually have to think in scenes now, I think, and really figure out, is there an entire scene or an entire part of a scene that I can cut completely? Because if I'm gonna actually cut down several thousand words when I've only managed a few hundred so far, I'm gonna have to really just be savage and chop it up. Hello again, still in the French Alps. I'm doing another writing session, and I think this is gonna be the last chunk of writing vlog that's gonna happen from the Alps. But I really wanted to film because still revisions, not a lot changing, still trying to cut word count and all that fun stuff. But today is a little bit different because what I've decided that I'm gonna do, and I kind of doubt I'm gonna be able to do this all today, and by kind of doubt, I mean absolutely 100% doubt it's not gonna happen. Basically, what I'm doing is still in the effort to cut things down. I have found a place where I have multiple little scenes that convey information that needs to be conveyed. But I think what I'm gonna do is combine these scenes, or I guess smoothen the transitions. Without giving you too many spoilers, I have some people arrive, and then I have that scene, close scene, new scene, next day, and then this event happens where some different conversations happen, some different information's conveyed, etc. I think that's not too vague to make sense, but also not spoilery in any way. Basically what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna transition from the scene where they arrive right into where they have the conversations. And the reason I didn't want to do this before is because it seemed like a lot of information, but I think readers will be curious to know that information right away. They'll wonder why these people are arriving and what's been happening and stuff. They'll want to know right away, and I really want to tell it right away. And I also think that's gonna definitely speed things up in terms of word count. We're not gonna have these little bubbles of scenes that have to be closed and opened, etc. This might end up cutting out some of the information because, again, I don't want to like information overload everybody, but I'm thinking that's probably a good thing. Like I've mentioned before, I am probably scratch it, I'm definitely going to be writing a sequel at some point. It's not going to be a sequel that is necessary to understand the first part of the book, because this definitely is a story in and of itself, but there's tons more that I want to tell about the story and about this world and about these characters. So I think probably anything that's not absolutely 100% necessary for this plot to work and for this story to work, I'm just gonna cut, and I can include that in the next book if I want it to still exist in this world, or at least to be evident to readers in this world. So that's what I'm doing today. It is going to affect a lot of things, because in each of these scenes, because basically it's a combination of 2 different scenes, but they weren't back to back. I did have a little bit in between, so I'm gonna have to make sure everything works okay. There are a couple in the second scene, there's a little spat between 2 of my characters, and now if I move that, like the information in the second scene a tiny bit earlier, I'm gonna have to fix the transitional scenes in between and stuff. So it is gonna be a little bit more complicated than just mashing 2 scenes together. Of course, it's never that easy. This is novel writing, people. It's never easy. But I think it'll work, and I'm hoping that it'll smooth things out and speed things up in a good way and not in a rushed way. So that is the little adventure I'm going to embark on right now today, and I'm fully equipped with coffee. The essentials, guys, the essentials. Just kidding, that last clip was not my last French Alps writing vlog clip. I'm actually gonna do another one because I wanted to fill you in on the progress that I've made. Yesterday, I told you guys what I was gonna do, the big change that I wanted to do, the first time that I've kind of ripped something apart and like changed the order. I normally don't do that with my stuff. Like normally if I'm gonna change the plot, I actually just change the plot, rewrite stuff, whatever, but it's very rare. I'm not sure I've actually ever done it quite like this, where I really just transplant a scene, make it, you know, happen earlier, and then have to fill in everything. So I wanted to tell you guys how that is going. Yesterday I did a lot of planning. I looked at everything, each individual scene, pinpointed the stuff that's going to need to change, whether it's a line that I wrote that implies something happened that hasn't happened yet now in the new version, or whether it's actually changing stuff around. And I mentioned that, you know, my characters have a little bit of a tiff in this one scene, so that I need to make sure the fight resolves and even just develops in the right way. So I did a lot of planning yesterday. I didn't do a whole lot of actual writing. I was a little bit scared, I'll admit. I didn't really want to actually jump into it. I was afraid to commit to it. But I did save everything in a different document. I still have that saved. I'm going to keep it probably forever, just in case I ever would need to go back and consult it. So then today I jumped in. I just dove in head first and jumped right into it. First, I copy pasted the scene I wanted to move, and I highlighted it all so that I could come back and erase it later, but I didn't erase it. I had trouble committing. And then I moved the scene to earlier, patched it together how it needed to patch together. Not quite sure I'm completely happy with the way I've done it. I'm gonna need to take another look at it, obviously, because it's kind of now that, you know, those few paragraphs are first draft version writing, so I need to make sure that I go back and make sure it patches together well, but I'm gonna do that after I fix everything. I did have to kind of rewrite the scene a little bit because it slightly changed tone. It was a much different tone because it happened later after several breaks. It was a bit more calm. I guess the adrenaline was not quite so high, but now I'm moving it forward to where it happens right after a moment that is quite high intensity, so everyone's still a little bit, you know, high strung. So I had to work through the scene and make sure those high strung tensions gradually decreased into the scene, just change the tone a little bit and the way characters were feeling. So I did that. That is done now. And now I'm working on the difficult unfolding of all the rest of the stuff that is now completely messed up. I had, I guess, two parts of the tiff that happens. I'm just calling it that, the little argument that happens between a couple of my characters. I had it sort of separated into two parts before, and now that I'm going through it, I'm realizing it doesn't need to be two parts. It was too long. It was, you know, a little bit of an argument, and then the scene, and then sort of the argument came to its climax. But to be honest, it's not something that needs that spacing out, because it's been, I guess it's been somewhat evident throughout part 3. So it's not rushed to just have the argument now. It's not at all out of the blue for anybody. It's definitely had its build up. It didn't need that other build up that I had in there before. It was just a little bit too long. This is stuff that I'm realizing that I didn't even realize in my first round of revisions. As I was reading it, everything was fine to me. I guess I didn't sense the slow pacing that could have been sped up a little bit. And I liked it. I felt like it was well written and everything, but now that I'm doing this, I'm realizing it's not necessary at all. It's not necessarily that it hurt the story, it was too much. It's not necessary. And honestly, for someone who's not as obsessed with this book as I am, I'm a little bit biased, it's my own baby, it was probably too slow before, and you probably would have gotten a bit bored with it if you hadn't been quite so biased like me. So I'm really glad I'm doing this. It's going well. It is gonna be a little bit tricky now, because now I really just have to make everything work. So it's kind of the hardest part of all of it. The absolute most pressure happens in those final touches, and this is why revisions are really difficult for me. First draft was difficult in an entirely different way. I don't even know which one I would call more difficult, because first draft, you're really creating the story. It's so important. It's so frustrating when your story's not working and you can't make the plot work, and you have maybe a beginning and end and a few things in the middle, but tying them together is just so hard. It's so hard to kind of wrangle with your story when it fights back, I guess, in a way. But revisions is where I feel the pressure. I want it to be as perfect as it possibly can be. I am aware that it can't be perfect. Nothing is perfect. Nothing's ever perfect, but I want it to be as close as I can possibly make it, and I want it to be so good that the pressure's there. Versus with first draft, you know, you make it work. As long as it works well, you can think, I'll come back and I'll revise that and I'll figure out that little bit that I left out in revisions. But in revisions, now's the time. You don't have anywhere else to push it off to. In terms of my writing vlog, this is going to be the end, I think, of this vlog. I think I have a ton of footage. It's been a little bit since I did a writing vlog. I did one at the beginning of my revisions round 1, and now this is revisions round 2. I don't know if I'll have enough to do a full third revisions vlog after this one, but if I don't, then I will have other stuff, because I'm going to start working on my query letter and my synopsis. So this finishes out revisions vlog 2. I hope this has been interesting to you guys. Let me know in the comments if you're currently working on a project, a writing project of any sort. Let me know where you are in the process, if you're also doing revisions, what some of your challenges are, if you think first drafting or revising is more difficult. Thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you soon.